This incident happened when I was 19. We were living in Iuka, Mississippi at the time. I had just started working at the local Walmart to help my single mom with rent and other expenses. It was only my 5th day on the job after my training, and I was working as a cashier when everything went down. Around 6 p.m., the store was pretty quiet. Suddenly, I heard the sound of tires screeching, followed by police sirens. A guy came running through the door with a gun in his hand. My first thought was, we're getting robbed. My hands were shaking as I fumbled with the register, trying to unlock it before he even demanded money. But to my surprise, he turned back and started shooting towards the entry gate. Fear gripped me, and I ducked down behind the counter, trembling. Everyone in the store was shouting in a panic. That's when I saw 2 cops enter Walmart, one of them shouting, "Drop your weapons," at the top of his lungs. The whole place was in chaos as people were screaming and trying to run for safety. The gunman took cover behind a display rack and started firing at the cops. They returned fire, and the sound of gunshots echoed through the store. I stayed low, trying to make myself as small as possible behind the counter. The fear was overwhelming, and I could barely breathe. One of the cops advanced, using the shelves for cover, while the other provided suppressive fire. It felt like a war zone. I could hear the screams of frightened customers and the relentless exchange of gunfire. Merchandise was being destroyed, and the air was thick with tension. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the gunfire stopped. I peeked out from behind the counter and saw the gunman lying on the floor, covered in a pool of blood. The cops had managed to subdue him. They quickly secured the scene and called for medical assistance. As the situation calmed down and more police arrived, I slowly got up from my hiding spot. The store was a mess, and the atmosphere was tense. Paramedics arrived to treat the injured, and the police began taking statements from witnesses. I couldn't shake the fear that had gripped me during the whole ordeal. It was over, but the sense of danger lingered. That night, I realized how close I had come to losing everything. I went home, hugged my mom tight, and promised myself that I would find a way to get us out of that neighborhood. Back in 2013, I was in my early 20s, living alone, and working the night shift at Walmart to make ends meet. I liked the quiet late hours and the steady routine of stocking shelves, but one night turned my life upside down. It was a typical Tuesday night, around 2 a.m., and I was putting cereal boxes back on the shelves in aisle 7. Suddenly, I felt someone behind me. I turned around and almost dropped a box of Cheerios. There stood a man, probably in his late 40s or early 50s, with a creepy smile on his face. "Hey there. I'm new here, just started tonight," he said, extending a hand. "Name's Bill." I hesitated but shook his hand. "Nice to meet you, Bill. I'm Jake." He had this weird, unsettling vibe, and I immediately felt uncomfortable. Bill seemed overly eager to chat and get to know me, but I wasn't interested. I made up some excuse about needing to finish my task and moved away. As my shift ended, Bill insisted on walking out with me. I politely declined, saying I had errands to run. Over the next 2 days, he continued trying to befriend me, but I kept my distance, feeling more uneasy with each interaction. One afternoon, while I was relaxing at home watching TV, there was a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. As I approached the door and looked through the peephole, it was pitch black. Alarm bells went off in my head. I stepped back and cautiously peeked out the window. My heart nearly stopped. Bill was standing there, covering the peephole. Panic set in. I never told him where I lived. He started shouting, "Come on, Jake, I know you're home. I can hear the TV," and began knocking furiously. I was too scared to react, just wanting it to be over. The knocking turned into banging. I thought about calling 911, but suddenly, the knocking stopped. I cautiously peeked out the window again, and he was gone. I was too shaken from the incident and decided to call my manager, and explained what had happened. His response chilled me to the bone. "Jake, we don't have any new employees. There's no Bill." My blood ran cold. Whoever this guy was, he was pretending to work at Walmart. My manager immediately called the cops and asked me to come in for my shift as usual, with a plan to signal the police, who would be undercover in the store. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease as I clocked in for my shift, wondering if the man would return or if the undercover cops would be able to catch him in the act. As I was helping a customer, near the electronics department, I felt that familiar, unsettling presence behind me. He shouted my name, as I turned slowly. There he was, staring at me furiously. Out of nowhere, he grabbed my hand and started asking why I didn't answer the door, right in front of the customer who also appeared shocked. I was taken aback by this sudden outburst but managed to signal to the undercover officers. Within moments, they swarmed in and apprehended him. I watched in a daze as they cuffed him and led him away. Turns out this wasn't the first time Bill had deceived his way into a Walmart uniform. He had been targeting staff and shoppers, pretending to be an employee to carry out nefarious deeds. There had been previous reports about him, but the cops were not able to catch him, but finally he was caught that day. That experience left me shaken to my core.